Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 18.4 RC2, or Release Candidate 2. iOS 18.4 RC2 is available to developers and public beta testers, and just like iOS 18.4, it supports all iOS 18 supported devices, from the oldest iPhone XR, XS, all the way up to the 16 Pro Max. This came in at a very large 7.65 gigabytes. It reinstalled the entire OS, overwrote the other one, so there must have been a significant update here, and it was the same size on all the devices we have here. Along with this, Apple also released iPadOS 18.4 RC2 along with macOS 15.4 RC2 the other day. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build number and talk about what's new, as we finally have some new notes here with new features and updates. If we go into settings, we'll go to general and then about. As you can see, the build number is 22E240. And this particular update does have some new features that we weren't aware about before that Apple mentioned in their notes, and there's some bug fixes as well. So we'll talk about that. But the first thing is the modem update. There is no modem update, whether you're coming from beta 4 to the RC or RC2. So hopefully connectivity is decent, but we won't know what that's like until we talk about it in the weekend follow-up, and we've given it a few days. As far as new features, well, Apple Intelligence features are now supported in 8 additional languages and 2 additional English locales. We've been hearing about this for a while. Apple has actually specified where it's supported. For example, India and Singapore, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean for South Korea, Portuguese, simplified Chinese, and Spanish. And you can see all of the different locations here. So you'll be able to utilize Apple Intelligence in those locales. We, of course, have all those features I've mentioned before. I'm just going to talk about the major one here, where we have ambient music. You saw a little bit of lag there, but typically it's fast. You'll see we have the ambient music updates, visual intelligence updates, but there is one thing in the news app that they've updated. I talked about this before, where we have food, but one thing I missed was if we go in, you'll see you can follow in Apple News. One thing we missed when I went in is if you go into a recipe, we actually have a cook button, and now we have a new cooking mode. So we have our ingredients list here, along with directions and what you would do, and you can go from step to step. There's some haptic feedback here as well. So this is a nice addition. If you have News Plus, you can use it with a new cooking mode. Setup Assistant now streamlines steps parents need to take to create a child account for a kid in their family. So it enables child-appropriate default settings if parents prefer to complete setup on a child's account later. That's typically found under your family settings. So if you go under Family here at the top, you can see typical settings that we have with things such as screen time, Ask to Buy, Apple Cash, subscriptions, and Ask to Buy now works with Face ID. That's something I was able to set up the other day. Makes it much easier, where I had to put in my password before, and it was a bit of a pain. So this is something that's available, and it looks like it's working a little bit better now. If we go into the Fitness app, if you're using Apple Fitness Plus, and we scroll down, maybe we're exploring, and we go down to our collections. We can show all, and if we go into this one, maybe get into a groove with a dance, tap the plus button, you can now add collections to your library. So you can delete it from here, or if we go back to fitness, go to our library, under collections, you'll see that I recently added this one. However, there's a little bit of a glitch there, but it says get into a groove with dance. So this is now an option if you want to add collections to your library. In addition to this, there's support for 10 new system languages. So if you're using an iPhone and you want to use it in a different language, there's quite a few options here. 10 new ones you can see listed below, such as Tamil, Telugu, Urdu, and more. Now, Photos has a new option under Settings. So if we go into Settings, go to Apps, then go down to Photos here. Under Photos, if we go into Photos, scroll down, you'll see the option to Show Recently Viewed and Shared. We can turn this off if we don't want to see these, making it a little bit different or more customizable. Another thing they've updated has to do with importing photos to Mac. Hidden photos are no longer included for import if you're using Face ID and it's enabled in your photo settings. So they won't show up. You won't actually see them included. So they won't show up on a Mac if you're trying to hide some specific photos with personal information. Apple pushed out a big update for Final Cut Pro on the Mac and iPad yesterday, bringing it to version 2.2 on the iPad and 11.1 on the Mac. There's also updates to Compressor, as well as Motion, and also Final Cut Camera on iPhone. There's some nice updates that make it more usable, some bug fixes that we've been waiting for quite some time. So if you haven't updated already, it's a free update if you already have Final Cut on either of those devices. As far as bug fixes in RC2, well, Apple has mentioned one, at least publicly. There are others as well, we'll talk about in a moment. But if we go into screen time and you're using screen time, they've fixed an issue where screen time app limits would persist even after a child uninstalls and reinstalls an app. It looks like they've fixed the camera bug finally. We don't know that 100% until we try it for a few days, but if you lock the phone, wake it up, slide over to go into the camera, oftentimes it would be a black display. So far, even with RC1, I haven't seen this return. Some people have said there were random reboots with RC1. I haven't seen that on any of my devices, including the iPad or iPhone, but I've seen that from a few different people. And also notifications seem to be fixed. They seem to scroll nice and smoothly. No issues here. There's haptic feedback where it should be, and just swiping them off and using them seems like it's working properly. So no real issues there. Thankfully, they've fixed that. And so far, the micro stutters are gone. Some people did see them return after a few days. I didn't see them on RC1, but some people would scroll and it would just stutter. You'll see it just loaded there on the iPhone 11, so maybe they're there. This just loaded and finished installing the update, so maybe that has something to do with it. But either way, I didn't see them return on the 16 Pro Max anyway. There's quite a few resolved issues in their release notes. However, these release notes don't seem to be updated much compared to RC1. You'll see all of the same sort of things with resolved issues with Apple Intelligence. There's a known issue with Apple Vision Pro app where the workaround is to update to beta 2 or later. However, on RC2, that doesn't seem to apply. So these notes seemingly need to be updated. And all of the new features and bug fixes seem to be the same from RC1. Resolved issues with Wi-Fi calling, writing tool issues have been resolved, and it seems to be the same there. iOS 18.4 is expected as soon as next week. Apple said it would release to the public in April. I would expect it as soon as the 31st or sometime next week. That's typically what we have. We have an RC, then a week later, the public release, and that's what I would expect this time around. Then we'll move on to iOS 18.5 Beta 1, maybe with some more new features. However, the focus is really on iOS 19. Apple announced when WWDC 2025 would be, and we now know that it will be on June 9th through the 13th. On June 9th, we expect to see iOS 19 Beta 1. So based on what we've seen before, that's what I would expect, of course, with a public release in September at some point before the iPhone 17 launch. Apple could change this, but they seem to be sticking to the same thing they've done year over year for many years. As far as performance, well, I did mention the micro stutters a little bit, but so far, one thing I noticed right away is it seems very smooth and snappy on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Whether it's ProMotion, going into apps, setting wallpaper, I didn't have the touch issues as much. I tried this a little bit earlier. I played around with it for a little bit, going into the camera is fast, and I've really had no issues whatsoever with it. It seems to be very fast. I do expect it to be indexing quite a bit in the background, so it will take a little bit of time at this point. As far as heat, well, it is a little bit warm. It's processing in the background, a whole update, so I don't really expect changes there. And when it comes to battery, well, if we take a look at battery health, so we'll go to battery health, I'm at 100% with 157 cycles. Using RC1, if we go maybe to the day before, I only had 3 hours and 3 minutes of screen active time, but I did use about 60% of the battery. This is actually pretty good with 3 hours and 50 minutes of screen idle time. It's improved over Beta 4, so hopefully RC2 improves it even more. You'll see Mail is using quite a bit of background activity and looks like it's pushing information at this point. As far as if you should install iOS 18.4 RC2, well, I would definitely recommend it if you're on RC1. And if you want to try this out and you have the public beta, this is the time to try it out if you're on iOS 18.3.2. Other than that, I think it's a solid update and it seems to be much better than what we expected initially. So it's much more reliable and they've fixed quite a few bugs. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the benchmarks. Initial benchmarks came back with 3,489 for single core, 8,479 for multi-core. We do need to give this a little bit of time as it's a little bit lower. The phone is a bit warm. It's definitely processing in the background. So I would expect this to increase quite a bit in a day or so. So I'll have to let it cool down and try it a little bit later. Now let me know if you've found anything different in RC2, what your experience has been so far. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.